Back in the early 1900s, when the lunatic asylums were a dumping ground for embarrassing family members or those not accepted by society, the doctors treated their patients as second-class citizens, making them subjects of horrible experiments, such as shock therapy and others, but none more devilish, none more inhumane than Keys Asylum, located in Florida. When Keys was in operation, it was a place of controversy from its founding in 1941, having been built in the basement of a university hospital. The idea was to give students majoring in psychiatry and behavioral science hands-on training with these so-called lunatics. The asylum was small, meant only to hold some of the most extreme cases of insane people. The idea was that if the students studying at the university could conduct a productive interview with the worst psychotic patients, then they would be able to handle anything that they may come across in their career. But this was not the only purpose of Keys Asylum. You see, Keys Asylum served as a sort of a last stop for its patients. It was a place for those too dangerous to be kept around other patients. Most taken in were forced to sign a waiver to allow doctors permissions to do anything necessary to cure their insanity. The main doctor of Keys Asylum was a man by the name of Donovan Watt. Never being given a job as a brain surgeon and behavioral science specialist in any other mental institution, he decided to simply build his own, where he would allow students to learn firsthand what it's like dealing with the mentally ill. Donovan's idea started out innocent enough, education for young minds as well as a tireless effort to cure the individuals. But the idea became more and more perverse as time went on. Soon Donovan adopted the practice of lobotomies in 1946. Now, for those of you who don't know what a lobotomy is, I'll briefly explain it. A lobotomy is a horrid practice. Basically, they would restrain the patient, hammer an ice pick through their eye, and destroy most, if not all, of their frontal lobe. Its purpose was to, more or less, quiet the most disturbed patients. The patients given this procedure were rendered vegetables, devoid of all emotions. Donovan not only performed the surgery, but he allowed students to watch and take notes on how it affected the patient afterwards. Donovan would lock the doors and not allow the students to leave the room until the procedure was over. He said that if they were going to work in an asylum, they would have to get used to seeing disturbing sights. Any student caught trying to unlock the door to the viewing room would promptly lose their internship. An intern by the name of Sheldon Harris was working with Donovan on an interview of a violently schizophrenic patient. The student became very disturbed when the doctor began to ask him such questions as, "Will you consider death a mercy?" Or, "If you were to die in an unfortunate accident, would you be willing to dedicate your mind and body to saving others with your disease via research?" When Sheldon tried to leave, Donovan turned around and asked what he was doing. When Sheldon answered with, "I don't feel comfortable being in this interview," Donovan pulled a scalpel out of his coat and held it up to Sheldon's throat, threatening to kill him if he left the interview, saying that it was vital he learn the skills he was trying to teach him. By June of 1950, reports of extreme abuse and malfeasance were filed to the police by former interns of the asylum. When the police went down the stairs to the asylum, the doors were bolted shut. The officers could hear screaming, even through the thick steel doors. A backup team was called in. When the door was breached, they found that half the doors of the patients' rooms had been kicked down. Officer and found patients dead in the halls. They knew this could only be Donovan's doing. They ran toward his office. As they drew closer, they found the interns that had gone missing months before lay dead in surgery rooms, various organs on an examining table. Upon further investigation of the asylum, they found notes from the doctor stating that his students needed to be euthanized before the insanity plagued them. He referred to himself as Azrael, the Archangel of Death. Donovan was under the illusion that he had been sent to Earth to kill anyone at risk of being insane. Basically, the man went crazy in his own asylum. He was never found, but something else was. A corridor with doors leading outside. The outside of this tunnel led to hundreds and hundreds of shallow graves. Some were nurses, some were interns, and sadly, some were children. They were only identifiable by their dental records, as their bodies had been eviscerated. Some of them lived nowhere near the hospital. In 1951, Keyes Asylum was closed and all files pertaining to its existence were burned. Keyes Asylum is nothing more than an urban legend now. The basement of the hospital has since been repainted and now is used as an office for physical therapy and storage. All employees that work in the basement of this certain hospital will tell you that Keyes Asylum never existed, that it's just a ghost story. They won't tell you about the tunnel that is covered up by a thick concrete wall and a door that always remains locked. No one will tell you that beyond that door lies a decaying tunnel, overgrown with vegetation, the same one that the officers found littered with bodies. No one will tell you about the cemetery that waits for you at the end of the tunnel deep within the woods. No one will tell you about the shadow that follows you late at night throughout the building, or the disembodied voices coming from inside the equipment rooms. No one will tell you that the water of the hydrotherapy pool sometimes turns to blood, or sometimes that they find gurneys in the middle of the basement's long hallways. They won't tell you about the hidden door that lies within the tunnel, or that it leads to a long corridor with hospital rooms all around. And they definitely won't tell you that I, Donovan Watt, take people who are in danger of going insane and set them free.